Before we start, I want to go over how to raise your hand or ask a question using Zoom. As we navigate through the presentation, you may have a question or want more clarification about material I discuss. If you're using a phone, you can press *9. If you're using a computer or tablet, you will need to use the horizontal panel on your Zoom screen and select participants. You will see the option to raise your hand or chat. Probably at the end, we're gonna look at the questions and address the chat box. Next slide, please, Michelle. My goal today is to teach you more about our agency and how we plan for our transportation needs and identify projects to improve the transportation network. Today, I'll be presenting an overview of what the Regional Transportation Plan is, who administers and prepares it, and inform you of opportunities to get involved. Before diving in, I want to explain what transportation planning is, as it is the core of our work. Transportation planning provides the information and tools needed to improve transportation performance. It is a continuous process that requires monitoring of the system's performance and conditions. Next slide, please. SJCOG has many roles as an agency. Federally designated as a metropolitan planning organization, SJCOG is comprised of a policy board to carry out transportation planning processes. Similar to its MPO responsibilities, SJCOG is also a state-designated regional transportation planning agency. RTPAs are also responsible for carrying out transportation planning processes and planning documents. Unrelated to transportation planning, SJCOG is an active joint powers authority. Created in 1968, SJCOG's role as a JPA is to foster intergovernmental coordination within San Joaquin County, neighboring jurisdictions, the other regional agencies in the San Joaquin Valley, the state of California, and various federal agencies. Lastly, SJCOG is a council of governments, which allows for governance of regional and interlocal issues. The purpose of a COG is to establish a consensus about the needs of an area and actions needed to solve local, regional, and interlocal problems. While a large portion of SJCOG's role is related to transportation, SJCOG also carries out a number of activities unrelated to transportation, such as air quality management, regional planning studies, census data, and regional housing. As the designated regional transportation planning agency for San Joaquin County, SJCOG's role is to administer and allocate federal funds for public transit and possible road and street improvement projects. SJCOG is responsible for adopting a regional transportation plan and sustainable community strategy, which considers the integration of state and federal transportation investments with local land use planning. Next slide, please. The Regional Transportation Plan is a state and federally required document that serves as a long-term framework of a region's transportation system. The plan is a shared vision for all of the cities in the county that considers multiple methods of transportation and land use, a revenue and investment plan, and transportation projects. The plan is prepared with input from interested parties and provides reasonable opportunities for these parties to comment on the content of the RTP. The plan covers over 20 years of efforts to improve mobility through transportation infrastructure projects and strategies that are updated every 4 years. By updating the document every 4 years, we can look at the previous RTP and measure how we've done and identify the challenges to successful implementation. The RTP identifies and analyzes transportation needs based on 4 key planning assumptions. These assumptions are transportation options, regional growth, plan benefits, and balanced funding. Regional growth takes into account the latest population and employment trends to make travel projections. The benefits of the plan refers to goals for improved air quality, economic development, and environmental benefits that arise from a more efficient and well-planned transportation system. The plan includes air quality and greenhouse gas targets that can improve health and quality of life through cleaner air. Transportation options refer to multiple ways to move around people and goods through the region, setting current and future regional transportation priorities. A healthy transportation system has a diverse offering of travel options, whether you walk, bike, take the bus, or use a car. The plan works to improve your mobility in the region and serves as a guide for achieving balanced investments in all modes of transportation. The funding plan is a very important component of the RTP, as projects must be listed in the RTP to receive funding for state and federal projects. The funding plan must also be constrained, meaning that the money we are planning to spend must equal the revenue we are expected to receive from the state, federal, and local sources. Next slide, please. And it's time for a poll question. Have you ever been involved with anything SJCOG related, including today? Okay, I wonder, are we going to show results? Here we go. Wow, that's awesome. And the new people, the no's, well, you're here today, so we'll turn that into a yes. Can I have the next slide, please? The RTP is broken down into the policy element, the sustainable community strategy, the financial element, and the action element. In the next following slides, I will explain SJCOG's RTP strategies and examples of how we are implementing these strategies. I will also go into greater detail about the financial portion of the RTP and the various sources of funding available to MPOs. Lastly, I will explain the sustainable community strategy. Next slide, please. In the following 4 slides, the RTP strategies are listed on the right side of the chart. The RTP seeks to maximize mobility by improving transportation to be more efficient and affordable. Next slide, please. An example of SJCOG implementing this strategy is the Unmet Transit Needs Assessment we perform every year that uses input from community groups and RTD to find gaps in public transit. Look for the 2020-2021 UTN report this summer. Next slide, please. SJCOG works towards preserving the existing transportation system by using innovative strategies. This is demonstrated with our funding of I-5 and I-205 HOV lanes, bridge retrofits, and ramp metering. Can you go to the prior slide? Thanks. This project implements the RTP strategy of optimizing existing transportation capacity with innovative strategies. HOV lanes can reduce congestion and harmful emissions by encouraging ride sharing and transit use. This particular project is in progress and will be completed in approximately 10 years. Next slide, please. And here is another close-up of your typical HOV lane. Next slide, please. Metering allows Caltrans to perform field surveillance, collect traffic data, adjust metering timing rates, and monitor ramp queues. These are examples of innovative strategies. Next slide, please. We also work to enhance the environment by using state and federal grants in addition to local funding like Measure K. For example, we included funding for a roundabout in the previous RTP at Jacktone Road that improves traffic flow and reduces traffic by 7.9 hours and decreases 87 pounds of carbon dioxide emissions daily. Our RTP strives to increase safety and security. We have implemented this strategy through a climate adaptation and resiliency study that identifies risks to our transportation system. This will allow us to plan and fortify our transportation system for years to come. Next slide, please. We recently completed phase 1 of this study and identified structures we should prioritize for climate resiliency improvements. This will increase safety and security of transportation infrastructure. You can find this study on our website in the upcoming weeks. Next slide, please. Transportation also plays an important role in promoting economic development in our region. The RTP seeks to improve one of the most important business sectors in our region by improving movement of goods by water, truck, and rail. As a result, the RTP created 3,400 full-time jobs a year and $9.5 billion in economic development from improved transportation infrastructure. Next slide, please. San Joaquin County is developing a bicycle master plan update to identify the safest and most convenient bicycle routes. This project fulfills the RTP strategies of improving air quality by reducing transportation-related emissions by building active transportation systems. Next slide, please. The Sustainable Community Strategy is a new component of the 2050 RTP, developed alongside Senate Bill 375. The SCS requires our organization to prepare this strategy in addition to our policy, action, and financial obligations. The SCS demonstrates how the RTP will meet greenhouse gas reduction targets set by the California Air Resources Board. We demonstrate compliance by showing how our region's developmental plans and transportation network and programs will work together to reduce greenhouse gas emissions for cars and light trucks. The SCS is broken down into 4 components. These components are land use, transportation networks, transportation demand management strategies, and transportation system management programs. An example of an SCS strategy is improving land use to build housing around transportation centers or by freeways. This reduces the need for a personal vehicle and reduces the amount of miles traveled by a vehicle. Next slide, please. This housing development is actually across the street from our offices on Weaver Road Street. Building housing around transportation improves public health by reducing the need for a personal vehicle, leading to less air pollution emissions. Next slide, please. The final component of the RTP is the financial element. The plan contains 20 years of funding sources. Transportation investments in the plan are based on an estimate of available funding through 2042, including reasonably expected federal, state, and local revenue sources. SJCOG makes projections of what funds we expect to receive and spend on projects by looking at historical patterns of funding from the federal, state, and local revenues, in addition to future economic, demographic, and legislative conditions. We develop this input from local transit agencies, local jurisdictions, and state and federal agencies, so our estimates are reasonable. Once we determine the funding amount, we must demonstrate that the amount of dollars we expect to spend on projects does not exceed the amount of funds estimated to be available. Thus, we cannot have an unlimited amount of projects. Projects selected must effectively accommodate future transportation and perform environmental benefits. Some examples of transportation projects included in the RTP are the recently completed I-5 widening, DIBS, and freeway service patrol. Next slide, please. DIBS is a program of SJCOG that serves San Joaquin, Stanislaus, and Merced counties. It was established to promote and encourage smart travel through carpooling, van pooling, riding transit, walking, and biking. The program's core focus is to improve air quality and reduce congestion. Next slide, please. As I mentioned before, the RTP is required by federal and state law, but there are other reasons why we are obligated to complete the RTP. The RTP is required by federal and state law, and it's the mechanism by which we receive funding for transportation projects. All projects must be listed in the RTP to be eligible for most federal and state funding. In addition, the RTP must meet Clean Air Act standards that regulates all sources of air emissions and protects public health and the environment. While it's not required to meet SB 375 greenhouse gas targets, the plan is encouraged to meet these targets set by the California Air Resources Board. Meeting greenhouse gas targets will lead to cleaner air and improved health. Next slide, please. It is also federally mandated that the RTP must promote safe and regionally integrated efficient transportation. This in turn promotes a better quality of life for residents due to reduced heart and respiratory problems from cleaner air and increased employment opportunities from more accessible transportation. Next slide, please. This is a timeline of the process SJCOG employs to meet its RTP obligations. We prepare for the upcoming RTP by doing outreach and determining how the region will grow over 20 years. This will help guide us towards what transportation investments we should make. We consider impacts on mobility, safety, housing, and employment. Our board of directors considers the different scenarios we have projected to see in the future. Upon approval, we choose the scenario that has the most consensus and present it to the board for approval. Currently, we are at the scenario development phase with plans to adopt this RTP in 2022. Next slide, please. Oh, poll time. How do you get around San Joaquin County? I'm ready for the results when you are. Well, I sort of anticipated that answer, so that's good information for us to know. Thank you for contributing. Next slide, please. If you're wondering about ways to stay plugged in or to get involved, public participation and input are an important part of the regional planning process. Thank you for being here and for engaging with SJCOG about the future of our region. Your feedback tonight will be shared with our board of directors, who will then take what you've shared into consideration as they deliberate the investment strategies, funding policies that will shape the next 20 years in San Joaquin County. This webinar will not be the only opportunity to get involved, as there will be more through 2021 and 2022. Next slide, please. If you're wondering about ways to stay plugged in or to get involved, here are 6 ways. You can sign up by emailing rtp@sjcog.org. You can attend virtual meetings and workshops, as well as SJCOG board meetings and public hearings. The online MetroQuest survey is another great opportunity to get involved, and it's launching in early May. Next slide, please. SJCOG recently announced a mini grant that will conduct outreach activities with the public about the RTP. The grant is up to $5,000, and we're looking for assistance from the community-based organizations, faith-based organizations, and youth-serving institutions to gather public input into the preparation of the 2022 RTP SCS. Next slide, please. In early May, we are launching a short survey to provide feedback about what your priorities are for the region. This is the MetroQuest survey, so you can be on the lookout for it early May. Next slide, please. And here are our social media handles if you'd like to get in contact with us. Next slide, please. Thank you very much for your time and attention. Let's take a look at the chat box and raised hands. Oh, a question from Cliff. You can go to our website to find more about the activities, like outreach activities we're going to conduct. And our strategies, more of that documentation, we're working on it right now because we're still more in the beginning phase of it. But you can email us for specific information too. Are there any other hands or questions? I'm not sure I see any. You should email us at, well, first off, you can see our website at sjcog.org/RTP. And the email you should use is rtp@sjcog.org. Anything else? I'm not seeing anything. If you have any further questions, feel free to email us. Next slide, please. Yeah, here's the information for contacting us. Thank you very much for participating today. We appreciate it. We're good. Thank you. Okay, I think, Michelle, well, we'll see. I think, yeah.